So in March of 2002, I landed my first pretty large deal. In fact, it was a $265,000 training contract, and it was with ATA Airlines. I got the opportunity through prospecting like you all, or all of us as salespeople do, like reaching out, contacting people. And I got my opportunity to go in to this airline, ATA Airlines, and spend a day learning more about them, listening to phone calls, getting to meet some of their supervisors and leadership. After that day, I was coached that I should do a summary of what I saw and what I observed. I produced that summary immediately when I got back to my hotel room, and I delivered it by 10 o'clock that night. The next day, I reached back out to confirm that my contact received it. He says not only had he received it, he was blown away how I had learned so much about them just after spending one day. He was like, I can't believe how much you know about us, and you only spent that short amount of time. Now, fast forward, this led to a proposal, and we were going against some of the biggest training companies out there. One was Richardson Consulting, and the other one was Achieve Global. And so these were big organizations, big names, a big reputation. And they ended up going with me and with, Upgrade Performance. And the reason I share that story is because early on in my career, I realized the power of discovery by just listening to someone. When someone believes that you really understand them, their situation, both logically and emotionally, they are far more receptive to what you have to offer. Everything you do and say after the fact will be met with receptivity versus resistance. And I know I, to this day, continue to struggle with jumping to a solution. Even in fact, when I first meet someone, I want to share my ideas of what they should do. I know enough about you. And then I quickly learn, then I get some pushback like, oh, why didn't they just accept that? They should have accepted it. I'm a smart person, right? Well, it's usually because we haven't taken the time to really get to know them. And it's not just knowing them, but it's them knowing that we know them. And so in this module, I'm going to go over the discovery process. And keep in mind that discovery, again, is both emotional and logical. So sometimes we're asking questions because it's important for our client to talk out loud and really communicate what they understand. We may have that understanding, but to get it in their words and let them know we understand them. And then, of course, along the way, making sure we can keep notes. And just like I learned early on in my career, doing a discovery summary. And that can be verbally or written if you really want to knock it out of the park. And when you do that, you will find you will have far fewer objections and concerns, and you can have even more sales and bigger sales. So what do you say? You want to jump in? So just to put this into context, we've talked about pre-meeting planning, everything we can do and say prior to the meeting to be prepared. So we are really confident and we've done our homework. And remember, the first thing a client will notice about you is your preparation. At this point, we've already gone through and set an agenda. We've built some personal rapport, maybe had some kind of connection or find something in common. And we've started off with a brief positioning or repositioning statement if relevant, to let them know kind of what our capacity is and kind of things we do and some of the products, something really short, right? And then at this point, we've now earned the right to start asking questions. Their guard is down. They realize that you're credible, that you bring real solutions, so they're willing to open up and share information with you. And this is where, when we get to discovery, as much as possible, we want to keep it pure, asking questions, diagnosing before we jump to that next step. You'll see below, tailor a solution. You'll get there, but we have to make sure we do a thorough diagnosis and discovery. And when we do that, it's going to be met with a very receptive client. So let's jump into some of the tools that you can use that can help you do your discovery, maybe even better, believe it or not, and have even more effective outcomes. So if you like to read, you might want to pick up the book, The Trusted Advisor by David Maister. But I'll distill it down for you in just a few key points that I think are relevant here, which is, according to David Maister, in the consulting or the trusted advisor business, which you are, right? You really want to be a trusted advisor to your clients. Earning the right has three parts. It's understanding the other person's situation, pretty basic, right? You should understand them and their situation, understanding how they feel about their situation, and then finally, demonstrating that you understand both of the previous items. So it's not enough understanding both emotional and logical, but demonstrating that you understand. And that's where a lot of salespeople, a lot of advisors seem to cut off. They want to shortchange the process. I'd like to ask you to pause the video right now, think about this, and answer the questions below and reflect on those. All right, so pause right now, and I'll see you on the other side. Again, pretty simple questions on the surface, but when you slow down and think even for 60, 90 seconds, the power of asking not only questions, but the right questions, they can really strengthen the relationship with your customer. In fact, your credibility will improve. And as you ask questions, they're going to find you that your intention is to help them, and they're going to be more willing. The more you ask questions, the more you ask relevant questions, that they'll share. And of course, be receptive to your solution, because they're like, well, this person understands me and my practice and understands my business. Now, how can experience and inexperience help or hurt you? The great thing is we have a lot of experienced people here on the ZO team, and that's great. And we can use that experience to our benefit. At the same time, sometimes that experience can cause some issues, and it certainly has with me. Sometimes I jump ahead in the process. I've seen it so many times. Have you ever been in a client meeting and it's like, gosh, I've seen this situation 500 times. And I may not even be exaggerating. Literally, you've seen this 500 times and you have an answer for it. You know it's going to work. You would go to Vegas and bet your house on it. However, if you provide that solution in that moment, that experience can actually shortchange the interaction. And your client might not be ready for the suggestion at this point as much as they may need it, and it could save time. But that's when experience can really cause an issue. So slowing down and making sure we've earned the right to make that suggestion, improvement, or recommendation. And on the other hand, inexperience can be a great thing, because we can be genuinely curious. We may ask questions and more questions and be super curious about something, which actually can be very endearing with the client. But at the same time, sometimes inexperience can help us kind of maybe not ask the right questions, or maybe not be as efficient as we'd like to be. So whether you're experienced or inexperienced, when you're experienced here at ZO or at another from another business line, remember it's important that we hit on all cylinders as it relates to this. Just because we're experienced, be careful that you don't jump too far ahead in the process. And of course, what will come out of it, you're going to have a client who is open to your considerations, recommendations, your products, because it's going to be relevant to them, because they know that you listen to them and know more about them. Let's talk about some techniques that can help us have extremely effective discovery and prepare great discovery questions. On this page, I just have a collection of questions that I gathered from the field. There's really not a formula like ask 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is more a volume of questions. And my advice here is just take a look at this page and underline or circle some of the questions that you might use. Maybe some of them are very familiar to you and you use them all the time. Maybe there's some in here that you're saying, I never asked that before. That's a great question. So again, just a collection of a massive amount of questions, and some of them kind of rely on the previous one to ask the next one, but hopefully it gives you some ideas and can help you be even better on your next appointment. But you can refer back to this when we get into the mind map, and I'll share more about that when we get to the mind mapping note-taking page. So take a client meeting that you have coming up. Maybe it's later today, it could be tomorrow. And I'd like to challenge you to put this mind map into practice. Okay, what's a mind map? It's really a note-taking technique. I don't know about you, but for years, I had the old yellow pad of paper. And on the yellow pad of paper, I started asking questions, I would want to take notes, right? I do have a great memory. It's just really short, but I'd want to take notes. And what would happen is I'd take those notes in a linear fashion. And if something that they shared really caught my attention, or I got to remember that, I don't know, did you ever do this? You put a star next to it, you like put a big asterisk, right? But then the next thing came up and it was even more important than one asterisk, but it was 2 or 3. And then, oh my gosh, over the top, there was something that was so important. It was 4 asterisks, right and left-hand side, and a big circle, right? Well, that worked for me. It did just fine until I came across this technique called mind mapping. And what this allows you to do is take notes by sections or categories. And when you're meeting with somebody, they'll often share things in different categories, and the conversation can bounce all around, which is a great thing because when you get someone talking, the last thing you want to do is stop them, right? You want to ask questions and keep them talking. Is a friend of mine who was a homicide detective. I don't have any personal relationship here. I wasn't his client or anything, but he was a homicide detective at the LA Police Department. And one thing he shared was, whenever we get a suspect talking, the last thing we want to do is stop them. So think about that when you're meeting with your clients. I'm not saying they're a homicide suspect, okay? But when you get them talking, when you stop them, it's sometimes hard to get them going again, especially if everything's a start-stop. Think about that. It's a lot of energy. So in discovery, we want to look for techniques that we can use that we can keep our clients talking longer and more around relevant subjects, around good questions, around good categories that make sense. So the mind map is really twofold. Number one, you can use it to prepare some great questions. And as you look at a mind map here, I have some example categories. You can change them, all right? So one thing is, people may share information about them personally, or you might learn something about their practice, their family, or something like that. You can collect that in that personal block. And then there's the general information block, or maybe you're going to ask about the services that they do, the treatments they do. So as you can see, you can collect the information in these different buckets. And here's what the mind map does for you. Number one, you can quickly visually look down, and if you have an empty box that you had hoped to collect some information in, if it's empty, that's a quick trigger for you to pivot the conversation at some point and say, hey, we haven't talked much about your team and their experience. Can you tell me more about that? And now you can fill out that block. When you take notes on a sheet of paper like this, oftentimes you can't quickly understand, did I get everything I need? And then you've walked out of the appointment, or you're beginning to put together a proposal or an order, and you're like, oh, I forgot to ask him this. I can't believe it. The mind map helps you do more thorough discovery, and at the same time helps you keep the client talking and sharing. Remember, you're not learning anything if your mouth is moving. You're learning when you hear them talk. And this is where you take the conversation from a selling conversation to a buying. Because think about it. People hate to be sold, but they love to buy. And when you get them talking, they're basically buying, they're selling themselves. So this is an example mind map. So number one, before a meeting, you might think about the different categories you want to collect information in. And then secondly, what are some high impact, must react questions that you can include that will get you started when you sit down with them, so you can prepare those questions beforehand. This is an example. Feel free to use the ones you like and add ones that you might include in there. As I mentioned right up above in the manual or the previous page, are a bunch of questions. So you can use those and draw on those. Now you can have this out and then you can have a blank one with you when you're talking with them. And we're doing a lot more virtual meetings now. So it would be easy to have this out on your desk and it will help you do even better discovery. And in the blank one, ask the questions from the one that you prepared prior to the meeting and then fill in the blank one with the information that they share with you. Pretty cool, huh? Now you might be saying, you know what, Bob, I'm just gonna stick to the yellow pad. That works fine for me. You don't understand, I've been doing this for 30 years, Bob. This is fine, I'm gonna stick here. I'm gonna say, you know what, give me one time, try it. Just get it on for size. It might feel a little bit clunky, but I think once you experience it, it might help you understand it. And then at that point, you can decide, I'm going to stick to the yellow paper. Or you might say, you know what? I might start using this mind map thing a little bit. It can help me get them talking more and me to just be quiet a little bit more so I learn more. So let's jump in and talk about some other discovery techniques that can help you really connect with your customers. So what's the difference between a conversation and an interrogation? I'm sure all of you are not familiar with interrogations personally. Well, maybe there's a small list we could put together. Who do you think has been interrogated? No, but an interrogation is where someone is just kind of asking a bunch of questions, right? It's almost like they're filling out a form. Name, rank, serial number, right? It's like, it's very one-sided. And if you want to do effective, thorough discovery, it's important that we make it conversational. We ask questions. We give time to the folks to actually respond to them and not cut them short and ask the next question or offer something from our side or, I got to tell you about it. So in discovery, it is sometimes difficult to be quiet and just learn more. In addition to that, sometimes we're trying to get to the next subject, right? We're trying to kind of get through this. And along the way, we can use this tool called the discovery wheel. It's just a really easy process that will sound, I think, very intuitive to you when you look at it, but it allows you to, bite into some of the subjects and things that your clients are sharing with you and take it a little bit deeper. And so when you look at this discovery wheel, it's just a way to kind of slow down and again, on some of the critical areas that you might be talking about. And maybe that's around, the treatments that they do and why they do them. And maybe some of the opportunities they have in the practice, right? You want to really dig into these conversations a little bit more, but in a conversational way. So when you look here at the discovery wheel, it's kind of just this 4-step process, right? So they share something, and here are a couple of questions. So what else should I know about your treatments, right? They might have gone through some of the highlights of their treatments. And then maybe you want to dive into some of the treatments specifically that you might be able to complement products with or take home care regimens, right? So what else should I know about that? And then additional follow-up questions based on their response. We talked about double-click and building rapport. Tell me more about that. Again, don't assume you know, or even if you do know, because you're experienced and you've heard it before, do they know? And when they communicate it to you verbally, that's, again, that emotional connection. They know that you know. Could you skip through this? Yeah, possibly. But you may end up on the other side when you're providing a solution, getting pushback and that, or you're like, I'm getting resistance or it's an objection. Oftentimes you can vaccinate objections by digging in early in discovery because you've actually overcome them here. So when you do provide the solution, they know that you're providing it based on their situation. A key indicator, if you're getting a lot of, I want to think about it, or, not right now, or, no, we don't want to do that. It doesn't apply to us. That's a red flag to say, I have to dig into discovery a little bit more. And the discovery wheel here can help you, again, vaccinate those objections. just like a vaccination does. You get a little bit of it in your body so your body can build up those antibodies. So when we have potential concerns, like you might get the feel that they might be kind of apprehensive about spending $5,000 on an opening order. Well, you could say, hey, what concerns would you have about investing $5,000 to get started? You do this in the discovery phase, so they're talking and you're not selling. And notice how I asked that. Hey, what concerns would you have about that? So I brought the objection up, right? I'm putting a little bit into their bloodstream, right? And I get them to talk about it. And as they talk about it, guess what? They're building up antibodies. They're actually solving their own problem. And who are they more likely to listen to? Right, themselves. They will listen to themselves before they'll listen to you. So take a look at this wheel. So develop it, build it out, and then restate it, right? Let them know you heard it, and they'll know that you heard it and you understand it by restating it, and then finally empathize, right? You know, I get it. I'd feel that way as well, right? So again, you're not going to do this with every question or every topic, but you know the critical ones. But the discovery wheel can really help you take your discovery from an A to an A double plus. Pretty cool, huh? So my advice to you, think about a meeting you have coming up and what's a topic that you can be deliberate about using the discovery wheel. Okay, have you thought about that client? I'd like you to write in the manual here, jot down the name of that client and what's the topic that you want to build out on, and prepare some of your questions and mentally get ready. And maybe that call's virtual and you're going to do it right after this and you can apply it. I'd love to hear how that goes. Good luck. Another tool that you can use in discovery is the impact of inaction. Chances are you've used this. You may not call it this or you've done it unconsciously, but we can be more conscious about it. It can help us help our clients make good decisions. Because after all, just like anything else, sometimes no decision is even more impactful of a decision than making a decision to move forward. And the impact of inaction really helps your clients think through, like, okay, if you don't do this, what would happen? What would occur if you continue down this path? It's kind of like me and my diet. Like, all right, if you don't start exercising, if you don't start watching your diet, let's fast forward a little bit. What's it going to look like in 6 months? What's your wardrobe going to look like? When you go to the doctor, what kind of results do you expect, right? And so sometimes looking ahead, saying, hey, if I don't do something, this is what could happen. That could help them make the decision to move from status quo to move forward. One of the biggest challenges in anything, human nature, is status quo. Status quo is so powerful, right? We've been doing it for so long. It's just routines that we've built up. And sometimes we've done them unconsciously. In order to shift from that, we use this technique, the impact of inaction, to break the status quo. And we say, hey, listen, if we do nothing, what will happen, right? And that can help motivate them to say, you know what, I'm going to do something finally. So take a look at this arc here. It starts out with that challenge. Then you talk a little bit, well, how long have you had this issue with your skin? Maybe it's rosacea, right? What have you tried? How did it work, right? What will life look like if we could solve it? Oh, we look at kind of what the future, bright future could look like. What would happen if you don't solve it? So you see how this flow can help your client stumble over the solution, can help your client sell themselves or buy a possibility of breaking from the status quo of just kind of rolling along. So again, I might challenge you to think about in an upcoming appointment where you can use this technique, the impact of inaction. And chances are, if you look at your calendar and some of your appointments, you're like, this is a good one. I'd like you to just jot down that client name right here to the right and make a commitment to using this technique. And it's not about being sneaky or crafty. Again, we're a trusted advisor. We're trying to help them make good decisions. This is just a technique to help your clients think through and how they can make good decisions about their practice and products that they buy and services that they offer. Pretty cool, huh? The discovery summary can be so useful and powerful. As I mentioned when I opened up this module, my first big deal with ATA Airlines was because I put together a discovery summary and I put it in a document. So it was pretty comprehensive. I was fired up for it. You know, when you have an opportunity, when you first get in sales, man, you want to make the most of it. So I put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. And so by putting together that document, it did a few things. Okay, number one, it in print demonstrated I was listening. And if I wasn't and I was way off base, then shame on me. At the same time, because I was, it really demonstrated to the client that not only did I understand their situation, not only did I understand the emotion behind their situation, I demonstrated it by putting it in print and sharing that with them. That can be super powerful. So in some cases, maybe you're doing prospecting for new accounts. Take a couple of minutes right after that call, or whether it's in person or over, virtually, and put together a brief email and just summarize, what you heard from them. What was some of the information about their situation, as it mentions here, current situation. What are some of the problems that they're encountering in their practice, or challenges or opportunities they'd like to take advantage of? What are some of their desired situations? What are some things they'd like to really focus on, key priorities, right? And you know what? It doesn't have to be long. In fact, I've found lately, when you can put together a few key bullets that could be read in 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how long you spent with them, that's even better. In fact, it's harder to share in fewer bullets than it is, several bullets. But when you can summarize that in a short email to them, and when they open it up and read it, oh my gosh, your credibility is like on rocket fuel. All of a sudden, they're like, whoa, this person is way different than any other salesperson I've ever dealt with. They truly listened, and I'm reading it. I know they got it. So the discovery summary can be, a little more formal like that in an email. I highly suggest that you make that part of your routine. It can also just be verbally. And when I'm using the mind map, that tool I mentioned a bit earlier, you can use that to quickly summarize your conversation, because you can look down at your mind map versus the yellow paper, like, oh, let me see what I had here. You can do on one page. You can say, hey, let me just summarize briefly kind of the highlights of what we talked about. It sounds like you've been in business for about 22 years and been at this location here specifically for the last 10, and you're looking to, do some renovations and build out your practice a bit more to add some more estheticians to your practice. Some of the challenges you're facing are this. So again, you can hit those different boxes that are in the mind map, but you can quickly summarize it. And usually you can summarize even like a 10 or 15 minute conversation in about 2 minutes. And it's really pretty amazing. You'll see your client go, wow, you really captured this. And we often skip this. I know I have, but I know when I do this and I'm really on my A game and I summarize before I segue into a solution, the receptivity is so high. So I might just encourage you on one meeting again, right? I'm just asking once. Commit to summarizing before you move to your solution. Before you make a recommendation about a product or putting training on their calendar or another meeting, summarize what you heard, confirm that you are accurate, confirm that there's nothing else that they'd like to share, because when you're sharing this, oftentimes more things come up, and those are the golden nuggets. And then at that point, then you've earned the right to move to solution and bridge to solution. So give it a go. The discovery summary is one of the most powerful selling techniques that you can employ. So this is one of those pages where we've collected best practices and tips from the field. My advice is to go through this list, read it, Put a check next to the ones that catch your attention. Take a look at some of these where you can put them into action. When? As quickly as possible. When's one of these meetings? As you read through this list, look at your calendar and some of the clients that you're going to be seeing in the next, 4, 6, 10 days, and say, okay, this is a good idea for this one. Because once again, it's not what we know, it's what we do. How can you put some of these simple best practices, ideas into practice as soon as possible and apply it to an upcoming meeting or interaction you're going to be having? So pause the video right now, review this, and jot down some clients right next to some of these that you can put this into practice. So we're at the end of discovery, right? We've talked about some different tools that you can use. Sometimes you'll be able to pull these out of the toolbox when it's relevant. For example, the discovery wheel. In preparation for a meeting, you may look at a couple of topics that you really want to dive into, that maybe it's an existing client that needs to expand their business or address some marketing ideas that they haven't done in the past. Maybe it's about working with them on getting on a cadence where you can do virtual meetings versus in person, and you want to dig into that. Use the discovery wheel. Prepare your questions using that so you can get into a healthy, thorough discovery. Then you can maybe pull out the impact of inaction. Maybe you have a client that has continued to give resistance, or they're just not fully confident to move forward with maybe a new skincare regimen or a bigger purchase or an event, right? Talk and use the impact of inaction. And if you prepare a few questions beforehand, chances are it's going to go even better. But we've covered a lot in this. But what is catching your attention? What is some ideas that you're like excited about putting into play? And then finally, what are 2 or 3 topics that you're going to ask some questions on or get into a deeper discussion on with your coach? And you'll be able to fill that out in the Google form as well. So folks, that's discovery. If we've done a great job here, in fact, you'll find that 99% of your sales are already done. Pretty cool, huh? All right, we'll see you in the next module, which is tailor a solution.